Alright, since we've looked at graphing quadratics, now we actually need to look at solving quadratics. There are numerous different ways to solve quadratics. You can solve by graphing, which is what we've already looked at. You can solve by factoring. You can solve by a thing called completing the square. You've done that before. And then you have the thing that always works, which is quadratic formula. And since it always works, that's actually the one that we're going to hone in on right now. So, quadratic formula. We are going to start with quadratic formula within standard form. Okay? First of all, standard form of a quadratic is ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. The important thing here is that you see that the x squared term comes first, the x term or the linear term comes second, and then your constant term comes last, and it is set equal to 0. This is very, very important. Before we can do quadratic formula, this must be set equal to 0. So, quadratic formula looks something like this. And you need to write that down. That's going to be very important. We're going to be using it a lot. So write it in your notes, put a big star around it, put a box around it, do whatever you need to do to call your attention to that formula, because we are going to be using it a lot. So here comes your first example problem. Let's say that our problem is 2x squared plus x plus 15 equals 0. And they've asked us to solve this. So, what we need to do is we're going to plug this into the formula. But before we do that, we need to identify a couple of things. A, B, and C. Right? A is going to be the number in front of x squared, so A is 2. B is going to be the number in front of x, so B is 1. C is going to be our constant term, so in this case, that is 15. Now, plugging this directly into the formula, we have -1 plus or minus the square root. It says b squared, so that would be 1 squared. I'm going to put it in parentheses, minus 4 times A. A is 2. And then C, slide this over so you can see it. C is going to be 15 all over 2 times A, which is 2. Please make sure your radical extends over that last term right there. So there is our setup. Now it's just going through and simplifying a couple of different things. So as we start to simplify this, the -1 hangs around on the outside, plus or minus square root 1 squared is 1, -4 times 2 is -8, -8 times 15 is -120. Alright, divided by 4. And we can go ahead and do the math here as well. So we end up with -1 plus or minus square root of -119 divided by 4. And as we've talked about before, you cannot have a negative underneath the radical. So what we end up with is -1 plus or minus I square roots of 119 over 4. Now, we can try to simplify the square root of 119. However, the square root of 119 does not simplify. That's in its simplest form. So we're going to leave it alone like that.